You're listening to Finding the Truth with Myke Hideous. There is the current topic of the concern of TikTok. For those of you who don't know what TikTok it is, and I'm sure you all know because you're watching this silly show. TikTok is the thing online that's 15 30 seconds worth of information.
Social network.
There you go. Yeah, he knows these terms better than I do, folks. I am merely here. I am merely the talent.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And he's
anyhow,
not on TikTok, obviously.
and I'm
So
not even
yes,
on
it's a
TikTok,
social.
but I do watch it.
Well, there's an interesting admission, but go ahead, my friend.
I only watch it because I have I've gotten a very short attention span these days, and I blame the internet. But
And you know what?
TikTok,
I've kept my attention span very long, and I cannot watch very short videos.
see, I'm kind of both ways. But anyway, my point is this. So
Go ahead.
I am not a member of TikTok. I simply watch a few things that might interest me.
Lurker.
So what exactly? Why should Americans be worried about TikTok? One concern is the possibility of TikTok hyping things up or TikTok could censor or censure things and information because the CCP controls the algorithms that push users and watchers, to watch, which pushes users and watchers towards certain information or push certain information towards people. In other words, they can use it as a propaganda mechanism. The other thing is, so imagine if you could, identity at law. How would I say this in the right? I can't. Sorry, folks. I jotted this down really quick, and I'm having trouble reading my own writing. Ultimately, TikTok, can be an influencer to create more division in this country that is already happening. So they might find one particular watcher, let's say myself, for example. They'll continue sending me, and mind you, this is if I were a subscriber. They would continue sending me these particular topics that would have to do with everything that's anti-democrat, anti-liberal, anti-socialist, anti-BLM, and they'll send it to me so that it gets me more and more angry and divides me from their ideology. And the same would go for anybody who's a Democrat to continually get stuff. Mainly, all they have is one thing: Donald Trump. So they could send 500 clips of Donald Trump on TikTok to some liberal Democrat, and that'll just get him more and more angry and hate people like me. So there you go.
And so, you're exactly right there, Mike, with how you describe TikTok. But to give a little bit finer point on it, because it is a social network that so many depend on nowadays. And I say depend on it because these things are, social networks are to some degree hitting those same sensory parts of your brain that drugs do. And so it's giving you the dopamine rush that you get from some drugs to some degree. So you may not be addicted to anything that you intake, but very much so video games and social networks can become addictive. And so very much so the communist Chinese are using TikTok to basically orchestrate messages to their receivers, whoever they may be. And I hate to tell you, Mike, even though you don't have a user account, you're still being sold to. They're reading what you're doing. They're reading what you're doing, and they're serving up content that you should be interested in, or that could possibly turn you from being interested in something.
Just like Amazon, just like YouTube, like Google, they all do it.
Well, exactly, and for different reasons. But social networks do it, because they have to get revenue from advertising and sales. And then Amazon does it because, of course, they want to sell more product. Facebook does it because they're, again, selling advertising. So it's just one of the things
I was going to say, off the top of your head, do you have any idea when TikTok came out? Was it 3 or 5 years ago?
It's more on the scale of 7 or 8 years. I think it was
Okay.
around 2015. But
It's just become more popular.
well, sure, because now it's grown to the point where they have billions of users.
Mm.
So the thing is that to remember is that well, not to remember. I want to bring our audience back as well as to tell you, Mike, about it. If you never got to see it, Netflix had a really good documentary a few years ago, and it was called uh, oh gosh, I just lost my terminology. It is the social
While you're thinking of that,
problem. Oh
while you're
gosh, I'll
thinking
have
of
to look
that,
it up. Sure, go ahead.
real quick, while you're thinking of that, just a note, people, Netflix is also owned by the Chinese. Go ahead.
Are they now?
As far as I know, I'm pretty sure I heard Netflix was a thing controlled, a network controlled by China, the CCP.
Right.
But the fact that we would use anything, including TikTok and or, if I'm correct, Netflix, the fact that we would use any of this in America is beyond me. This is a communist government. I don't care how diplomatic they may seem to certain people, they are still the Chinese government. Or I'm sorry,
Well,
the
I,
Communist Chinese Party.
okay, so let me circle you back. As of right now, from a Google search, Netflix is a publicly traded company, so there is no one owner. So it is an American publicly traded
Then
company.
I stand corrected.
Um,
I'm
and
glad you brought that up to me.
Netflix is its own company, a corporate name, Netflix Inc. Yeah, yeah, about DVDs. Yeah, no, they're a standalone American company as of right now. But to your point, I mean, there may be Chinese interests that have a large amount of holding in the stock. So who knows if they do have seats on the board? So that just
Probably.
goes to show you how there's many ways to infiltrate essentially the businesses and systems and media of our country. Not to mention just having media corporate heads that are actually empathetic to communist or China or whatever interest, because of course it lines their pocket and they don't really care
Hmm.
in the end. In either case, so getting back to
All right.
TikTok,
Oh,
TikTok is
we're
certainly
still going on
as
that? Oh, okay.
well. I just want to wrap it up in the way of from a technical standpoint to point out for our audience is that the movie I was looking for was The Social Dilemma. And it's a great documentary to watch because what will it'll explain to you is how when users are using social networks, whatever social network um, it is their network, their software is reading what you're doing, and they are creating basically a virtual or digital model of what you're
Hmm.
interested in. And
Yeah.
therefore, they are serving up content that responds to that. And it is very creepy in a way that they can really connect the dots behind the scenes like you would not even imagine. And so that's what provides that sensation that, like, oh, I had a conversation this afternoon about shoes, and then when I got home and went browsing, I saw an ad for shoes. So it's not so much that the
They read
technology
my
is
mind.
listening. Yeah, that's not their technology is listening to you. It's really the fact that technology is understanding what you're most interested in, and therefore it's responding correctly, and it's doing so for the benefit and the profits of these corporations. So if you watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, it is about an hour and a half long, and it really does give you a great insight into how these companies work, because the documentary was actually had featured interviews from many of the people that are part of these companies that we've just been talking about. So they are more than familiar with the fact of what's going on behind the scenes, and they're trying to warn people that this stuff is dangerous. And
Mm.
most definitely,
From
I'll say this real quickly, is the fact that I think social media is really something that no individual should be exposed to until they are 18, maybe 21, and maybe have two different levels at that point, one for 18-year-olds, and then 21, you're an adult, you have this
right.
level of access. But there
From
should
from
be no way that a 13-year-old should have access to Tinder,
from what I
anyway.
understand, what they're trying to do is at least try to boycott it from being used or viewed in any government buildings.
Well, yeah, that's actually already a rule. That's one of the things that was funny how last month President Corpse decides to post a video on TikTok, but meanwhile, by his own hand, he actually restricted all government employees from using TikTok. So it's just like, oh, do as I say, not as I do, because I'm gonna try and get myself reelected, so I'm
Nikki
gonna go
Haley
on
did the same
TikTok.
thing. Nikki Haley
Who did?
tried to reprimand Ramaswamy when they debated each other. And Ramaswamy said, before you debate me, maybe you should check your kid because your kid is the one using TikTok. These fucking
Yep.
politicians, dude. So we're gonna just wrap up the topics here. So here's one of probably my favorite article. So let's talk about equality, people, between men and women. Pardon me. I made the most incredible, delicious dinner this evening with some very tiny penna pasta with some Italian tomato sauce, with some beef, ground beef, and sausage, but not the traditional sausage like in a hot dog kind of shape, just the meat that they would normally stuff into the pork intestines. Anyway,
I'm
broke
sorry,
that
Mike.
all
Are
up.
you talking about men and women right now, or a
I'm
recipe that
telling
you're
them why
cooking?
I'm belching. I'm telling
Oh,
them why
okay,
I've been
fine.
burping the whole
Well,
time. But I made this
audience,
great.
please check out the description below because we're going to post Mike's recipe for his dinner tonight,
It's
and you
really
guys can
simple.
check it out.
But anyway, so I made this great. I fried up the meat. Put some Italian seasoning on it. A little salt, pepper, hot pepper. So two types of pepper, oregano, and I mixed garlic and onions in it. Fried it up with some um, olive oil. I gotta eat olive oil. I'm Italian. Threw in a little bit of butter. Fried that up. Had the sauce simmering. By the time the meat was done, I put that in the sauce, and then when the macaronis were all done, macaroni, that's an Italian thing. When the pasta was done, put everything together. Oh my goodness, I could not stop eating it. And I have been belching this whole time through the show. So pardon me, folks. But anywho,
Thank you for sharing, Mike.
you're
That we
quite
all
welcome.
really appreciate that.
Do you know that women who join the military, let me see if I can read this properly. No more light. Women who join the military, and let me be clear about this, I am 100% in support of women, real women, not the ones with beards and dicks. Um, I support them in the military 100%. In any event, so they end up so women who join the military end up doing a portion of the training that men are forced to engage in to toughen them up, make them much stronger, and turn them into killing machines so that they can protect us in this country to have our freedom and our liberties. So, this training teaches them to survive and destroy the potential enemy. Women are subjected to only a portion of this rigorous training uh, for the men simply for the fact that they are physically incapable of executing the same arduous training the men endure to become SEALs, Black Op personnel, Green Berets, and any other various difficult positions within the military, including much of the standard basic men training, basic training that men must perform to pass the basic training of the military to become a soldier, whatever. So you tell me, where is the equality? Okay. As a matter of fact, all right, keep that in mind. I saw a sign for a race, a running race when you run. And it said It was a race for equality for both men and women to participate in which they would engage in a foot race to support the cause for equality. But when you read the bottom smaller type on the poster, it read as follows, and I quote: "Men 10 miles, women 5 miles." So again, I ask you, where is the fucking equality? Uh, when is this fantasy of the Gen Zs, the Gen Zers, if whatever you'd call them, the Jenners of Zers, when is this going to end? When is this fantasy? When is it going to stop? Uh, will we ever go back to when things, when the reality of things was real and not this imaginary feel good about yourself and force others to feel good about yourself? When is that going to stop? Because ultimately, I don't see the logic in telling me that two sexes are going to race for one goal, in this case, equality between men and women, where women have to run less than the men. When are women going to stop saying that they can beat men in everything that they do when they don't get some of the jobs that men do, because they would never do some of the things that men do as jobs? And if they do, there's probably 0.0001% of women that do those jobs that men, usually only men, do, like working on an oil rig, like working in a mine, like I don't know, blowing up mountains, whatever. When you know what I'm
Is
saying? When
that
they
a
put diamond,
job?
it's, yeah, I'm trying to get a job. When I get an application for that, um, so like, when is this going to stop? Like these people,
Well, Mike,
they just continually push this nonsense of feelings and emotion into, they bend the facts and make you think that what they're saying is going to be better for everybody, but in reality, for the last, oh, I don't know, maybe a million years, it's been one way. Men have more muscle mass and bone structure as opposed to women. I'll get this is my last
well,
term, my
okay.
last part of the statement here. When I look at a woman and I see that beautiful curve in their body, and I'm not being a pervert here. This is the truth, okay? And you look at a woman's buttocks or her thighs, and the way that beautiful part of their body is just sort of, it's almost like jelly. And I don't mean gigantic fat jelly. I mean a nice, well, firm woman's body. And you can see the muscle on their body is not, unless of course they work out like men where they destroy their body and their boobies go from a nice voluptuous look to this hard muscle tit, which is absolutely disgusting. So all I'm saying is, you look at a woman, like a real woman, not a woman with tits, I'm sorry, with beard, with a beard and a dick, not that kind of woman. I mean a real woman. And you look at them and you see that body, and you can just tell their body is structured different than the men. Believe me, I see women do gymnastics. Like, I'm blown away when I see these women do certain gymnastics that I could never do, but they're trained for it and they do it so well because their bodies are made for it. But their bodies not might not be made for running a jackhammer. You know what I'm saying?
Well, of
Yeah.
course.
Sorry.
I get that entirely. So it's interesting the way you describe this, honestly, Mike.
My analogy.
Yes, and not for nothing, I'm one of those guys that actually find muscular, fit women very attractive. But
Oh.
regardless of that fact,
You talking
this is
about
this is
the big women that?
No, not necessarily. I'm just talking about women that like to stay in shape, that are
Oh,
fit,
I'm for that
and
as long as they're not
muscularly
muscle
toned.
bound.
I'm not talking about. I mean, if you happen to be an Amazonian, I guess I'm sure I could get along with you as well. But my point being is that I think we're talking about two different types of equality here, because the many of the left are looking to have equality in the way of rights, which is something that they drum on about incessantly. And the whole thing about the misnomer that somehow women aren't paid as much as men, which has been proven statistically incorrect repeatedly. Because if you actually compare women and men that do the same jobs, you'll actually find that quite often women are earning more. Not to mention, women
Right,
still outlive men. So for the most part, depending on how things go for your average woman, they're going
right,
to cash out with whenever hey, the old man finally kicks off. So anyway, my point
right.
is, like, there's equality of rights. There's equality. I mean, the vote, the whole thing. Like, there's that side of it, but equality and physicality, I don't see. That goes back to the point of the whole transgender thing. I actually just saw a clip from a Senate hearing where they were talking specifically about, basically biological men competing in women's sports, and how absurd that is, because they are so obviously overstrength. And they showed a video montage of girls being seriously hurt by their female and males, genitals, whatever, however you want to describe it,
That's right.
basically being too aggressive and hurting the women. So
Hmm.
I think that, I to your other point, I think women, I love women. I'm hard coded to love women in the form of women and their shape and the whole thing. I find something attractive almost in any woman I meet. But the reality is that they can only compete amongst themselves, just like men should only compete amongst themselves. And
That's
if
right.
and and
Remember the
about the
topic.
rights and everything else, as far as I know, most women, like you were pointing out, they can get the jobs they want. Do they want to be running a jackhammer in the middle of 30-degree weather on your average highway? No, most women don't want to do that. Most
Most
guys are
don't.
like, I'll do whatever I need to do to earn $30 a day, 30 bucks an
Hmm.
hour. But I mean, still, most women are, they can do something where they you know I'll go back to a different principle here. It's best to work smarter, not harder. And I'm sure women are infinitely more smarter than men in many instances. So they are doing the jobs that is easiest for them, because they can work smart, and men can go knock themselves out.
Right. But don't tell them that, because then they would tell you, oh, we don't need men.
Well, that's
Not
still a
all of
different
them.
subset. That's
Listen,
a different
there are
subset of
still
women.
women out there who believe in, you know, chivalry and doing things for a woman, and a woman doing things for
You mean
men.
like,
And I don't mean to sound chauvinistic. I'm simply saying
no.
there are certain women who enjoy staying at home, being a housewife, taking care of their children, cooking dinner, and cleaning, taking care of the house, while the man goes out and works on the fire department, having to put out burning buildings, or works on the police department, having to well, they can't shoot and kill criminals anymore, being shot by criminals. Um, you know what I'm saying? There are certain women who still appreciate that. So for those women out
I
there,
agree.
I say thank you. And for the women
I
out there
thank
with
them as well.
beards and dicks, I'm sorry, but this show is not for you. Which goes to another topic that I must include. I am not against homosexuals. I know
Or
homosexual people.
transsexuals. Or transsexuals.
Well, no, actually, I have an issue with that. When you start
Well, it
cutting your
depends.
genitals off, well, hang on. Let me tell people
Okay.
here, because I don't want them to get confused. I am not homophobic. I have homosexual friends, and all of them agree with what I'm saying right now. However, if you are a person who is a male or a female who is gay, who thinks that cutting off your genitalia, whether it's a vagina or a penis, and lopping off your tits or growing a pair, um, they think that's okay. And they think that once they look like the opposite sex, that they are the opposite sex. That is not true. And you can bitch and complain and yell and scream and call me this, that, and the other about that topic not being accurate, and you'd still be wrong. Don't tell me to follow the science, because I have followed the science. Male is XY and female is XX. And when you die, if you get a transition into another sex and you die, 100 years from now, if they open up your coffin and find your remains, they're going to do a DNA test, and they're still going to find out that you have the same chromosomes from the day you were born. Bring it on.